Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the originals, the latest episode of Colony, as well as the latest episode of Reverie. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of the originals, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Colony, and/or skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Reverie. But the first thing I'm to talk about is this week's episode of the originals, a great episode. So let's break things down. It's kind of interesting, Klaus's initial way of trying to help out with her whole situation. You know, the whole, once again, I think it's funny, they never outright refer to, like I said, it is not being referred to as the Hollow since season 4. Maybe they mentioned it earlier in this season, but they never if they have, it's been a once thing, because they just, for all the darkness in her, they never go like the Hollow. Once again, I think it's just because all the darkness and everything that it is inside of her, no longer just the Hollow. But nevertheless, moving on, beside the point, to the point, but beside the point at the same time, Klaus actually tried to be her punching bag, but it wasn't enough to kind of alleviate all the pain she had. So he kidnaps Roman and tries to make him her punching bag, but that doesn't necessarily work out for multiple reasons. Obviously, because Elijah comes about, because the whole Antoinette coming to him about it. And it's kind of sad. It's kind of a messed up situation, because Elijah has all of his memories of those, you know, who he was before, plus the 7 years he spent with Antoinette. Like, so it's a situation of their relationship is very complicated, because he remembers everything that he felt for Haley, and now she's gone, and that's kind of on him a little bit. But he still has feelings for Antoinette, but he still has his obligation to his family, so it gets super fucking complicated. So, but you know, Klaus is willing to do whatever, and I thought that was such a powerful line of like, no, like, I don't care what the cost is, like, to alleviate my daughter's pain in any shape or form, I'm willing to do it. Because for him, it's like, he's not even listening to Elijah. He doesn't want to listen to Elijah, because it's like, you have no right. Yeah, once upon a time, I would have held on to your words. Like, yeah, you always kind of brought me back. But why would I listen to you now? The one who turned his back on her family and led to Hope's mom die. You know, like, it's like, how can I trust you anymore? That's the biggest issue. Like, he might have his brother back, but it's like he doesn't trust Elijah anymore. So it's kind of like, why should I listen to your advice? He's like, this is my daughter, I'll handle her my own way. But for Elijah, it's like, you have to stop this, or she's going to go down a path. Because once again, Hope is supposed to be the hope of this family. She was supposed to be better than us. We don't want her to go down the same route as us, make the same mistakes that we made. We can save her and stop her. We have to find a way. I mean, that's all Elijah's trying to do, is find a way to save his niece. But it's like, it doesn't seem like there is a way. It's almost kind of like, well, eventually the darkness will consume her, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. It's kind of what, like, he's kind of getting at. So, but obviously, like, Roman tries to apologize and everything, but like, at first she's not willing to listen, especially because when he says stuff, he's like, oh, when he made a mistake of saying like, oh, my mom died too. It's like, don't tell me like, oh, your mom died. Your mom was nothing like my mom, you know, like, you know, so it's kind of that whole complicated situation, because it's like, your mom was all about the purity of vampires and stuff like that. Never once. My mom represented so many groups. She tried, you know, she tried to help keep the peace in New Orleans for so long, because she represented so many sides. She was a hybrid. You know, she was originally a werewolf, a crescent wolf at that. Now she's part vampire, because the whole hybrid situation is like, she tried to bring people together. She never like kept people separated because of what they were, you know. So it's like, don't compare your bigoted mom to mine. So, like I said, it's a complicated situation, because the fact of the matter is, he did lose his mom too. And it's just a thing of like, yeah, he said himself, it's like, he was raised hearing like, oh, how terrible Hope Michelson is, like how the Michelson family is just terrible. They're monsters, they're evil, which is kind of funny considering you're vampires and you're casting a stone on other people being evil. It's like, once again, amongst the supernaturals, vampires are probably considered the most evil of evil. People hate vampires in general, but it's just kind of funny in my eyes. But the sad thing is, it's just kind of for him, it's like he was caught between what his own consciousness was telling him and all the stuff that his mom had just berated into his head for so long about her being evil. He was scared. He didn't listen to what his heart said, how he felt about Hope. Obviously, it sank in enough to the point he was hesitant. Like, I mean, to be fair, he wasn't 100% at fault, because he didn't go through with it when he had the chance. When his mom was pushing him to do it, and he didn't do it because he felt like it wasn't the right thing to do. But still, obviously, Hope has all her rage and stuff, but she didn't kill Roman, because she's like, in the end, it's like, he's an innocent victim in all of this. He was just raised in his mama's propaganda, you know? And in the long run, yeah, he may have deceived us, and that led to the capturing. But for her, it's like he's no more at fault in this situation than I am, because arguably she put her mom in that situation where she kind of locked her mom away and for safekeeping, just to draw her dad back home and stuff like that. So that's the whole thing. What was the ultimate plan, though, which was interesting, was the fact is that lure all of them together and wipe them out in one fell swoop like that. That was pretty interesting. She did it almost effortlessly, too. She just sent out a wave, and it was just a wave of murder is what that was. That was crazy. I assume that is wiping them all out. I wasn't expecting them to go down like that. I don't know. I mean, I didn't know how I expected that, really, because there was no changing their minds. Like, I think one way or another, and it's something Klaus and them are kind of saying, like, one way or another, they would have had to be dealt with anyway. Like, immortality isn't for everyone, is kind of what Klaus was saying. So it's kind of like, oh, you did kind of a public service. It's kind of like, oh, you took out the trash type of situation. Like I said, I don't know how you would have resolved that situation any other way, because they weren't going to change their minds about, like, this whole purity thing, kind of running things the way Marcel kind of ran things, just kind of even more, like, stricter and stuff like that. So, what's crazy, too, is they ended up getting a crap ton of, a good chunk of Marcel's venom too, and it's like that would have screwed things up, but that got smashed. It's like, okay, so that's not what we have to worry about. So that's interesting. I was curious to see what that was going to turn into. I thought it was so fascinating because Emmett's kind of like, oh yeah, the reason why he came to New Orleans in the first place is because he had heard rumors about how Marcel was running things, basically how he'd been running things from like season 1 into the past, like from ever since he took control of New Orleans to season 1, before the Michelson showed up and kind of screwed up how he ran things. It's like, oh yeah, you put werewolves in their place and you cause vampires to be loyal to their kind. And then what did you do? You went off and became some abomination. It's like, okay, here we go. So that's interesting. But sadly, when it was all said and done, there was a casualty in all of this. Josh. Like, they're killing me with these final season things where it's just kind of like, oh yeah, like, we ain't afraid to kill off some characters. Like, it's like, damn, dude, like, Josh has been around a very long time. He's like one of the few remaining, like, I don't know if he considered, like, I mean, he's a staple character. He's been around since the beginning of the series. Like, it's crazy, all the stuff that Josh has been there through it all with the entire series, and it's just kind of like, oh, this is I mean, if once again, it's kind of like the Vampire Diaries. People start dropping left and right, need be too, like, it's final season time, so it's kind of like, yeah, once again, it's like, let's not forget who else died. Haley's going, which is, it's stuff like that where it's like, man, that's crazy, especially because he kind of went out helping Marcel because he was kind of the only one that showed up. Because it was kind of a sad thing where it's like, Emmett was like, yeah, before you went missing, like in the past, like people would have, all your vampires would have been looking all over for you, but it's like, not now. But just, they feel like you've turned your back. Just the way Marcel's kind of been playing things lately. And the only person that actually came to help him was Josh, which speaks volumes. And just sadly, he ended up dying because of it. And what he said was so nice of like, yeah, Marcel is his family. And the fact of the matter is, it's even something Marcel even talks about. The fact this is like, Josh is like, you are more loyal to me. You're more loyal to your friends, to this city, just to everyone, I love the thing of like Josh being, like Marcel being like, I thought I knew everything, like, but apparently you do. Like, I go away, I leave the city in your hands for a couple years and you just think you kind of know everything. He's like, oh, I've always known everything. I just pretended to be dumb. And it's just like, oh man, that sucks. Because it's got to suck, too, because let's not forget, I'd assume that's going to be something Marcel's going to handle, but telling Davina about that, too, because Josh was, like, her best friend, Because I thought that was such a moment where he's just, Klaus is like, all right, you, Josh, get some vampires and clean up these bodies before anyone gets suspicious. I guess that's just because, like, if any of the vampires find out about what went down, that would kind of make people more afraid of Hope. At the very least, we can pretend like Hope still got everything under control. If they find out that Hope just outright did this, wiped out all those vampires by herself, then I'll start kind of the angry mob of like, yo, we need to take care of Hope now type of thing. Plus, probably I assume that's all of them, all like the purists have been kind of wiped out now. But the moment him being like, he's like, what's wrong? And then Marcel's like, I'll tell you tomorrow. It's kind of like, for one, he's processing it himself, but on top of that, it's like Klaus already got enough on his shoulders that he doesn't need to know about this. Him and Josh didn't always see eye to eye, but he never, like, he's threatened Josh more often than you can count on one hand. Hell, he's even done it a couple of times this season, but even, like, even he wouldn't want things. It's kind of sad that things kind of ended the way that they did. But at the very least, you do have that beautiful moment of them being reunited with Aiden at the end. I thought it was kind of neat because he had talked about that dude he was meeting in the bar earlier. It's like, yeah, just seeing you, you kind of remind me of someone I used to. And I was like, oh, Aiden, that sucks, dude. But then it's kind of like, it's nice that they kind of got reunited at the end. So it's kind of like there's some beauty to this whole situation because it's like, even if Haley's going, you can think on some level that, hey, she's with family, she's kicking it with people that she cared about. Like her parents, she never really got to know them, but now maybe in an afterlife, she's reunited with them. So there's some semblance of kind of like this joy to it, so not joy, just there's a silver lining to it that like Josh and Aiden are reunited after all this time and stuff. And he's like, God, I missed you so much. And it's just like, at least it kind of makes you go, okay, things kind of ended happily there, but still. I mean, because it's crazy because Josh is like that means now the second pillar, technically 3 pillars of the community, I guess you could make the argument died because I think Ivy kind of falls into that category too. And it's like, they lost Ivy, they've lost Haley, now Josh. It's like, that's a lot, dude. Probably the only pillars left technically probably would be Vincent after everything, so also like Henry's the lady who was looking after Henry who died because of the vampires, she ended up dying too. So it's like even the werewolves lost their second to kind of run things. It's a crazy situation. It's like they've been dealt with, but the ramifications of what they did still kind of lasting ripple effects. It still doesn't change the current situation that like Hope is still spiraling because it's like it's gone for now, but eventually it will kind of spike back up because this is just a temporary solution. It's kind of sad that, especially with the whole situation playing out the way it did for Declan, like the only reason why Declan was going looking for answers, even though Josh was like, hey, don't look for answers, because for him, he was scared about going crazy. And you can make the argument like Elijah trying to give him peace of mind just set things in motion to kind of be where he was and kind of let things kind of playing out sadly the way they did, just because he was up there looking for information and stuff. It didn't even click in my mind to think about that until like that whole thing happened. It's kind of like, all right, it didn't click in my head that you were in the same place. That church gets a lot of mileage over the course of the series. Like a lot of stuff went down in church. Because isn't that in the same exact church? I know that's the same place. No, is that the same church that Hope was born in? Or is it a different church? Because that's like that's the main place, It's like I said, just a lot of stuff goes down in that place. Like I said, now I'm confusing it for another main church in the show. I don't remember. I feel like it might. I'm pretty sure it's the same church. Nevertheless, but just Declan was in the wrong place at the wrong time just because he was trying to fill in the blanks. Because like, okay, stuff is going on and he's worried he's going crazy too. Which is sad because like no one in his family was actually crazy because we actually know it was vampires and extenuating circles. It wasn't the vampires, it was witches, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Well, the first dude that was kind of crazy in their family, that was witches. The second dude was a witch too, wasn't? Because that whole thing, like their whole like family, like, oh, we're crazy stuff. Like, yeah, that ended up being witches the entire time, like controlling somebody. So it's just kind of like there were extenuating circumstances. What I'm trying to get at. Luckily, Klaus was able to get to him first, save him. I was like, oh man, I was like, oh, is he about to become a vampire? It's like, no, you don't need to do all that. Oh, you just gotta heal him. But it's like, sadly, there still ended up being a guy that was with him that died, and now Hope's curse has been activated. It was bad enough holding back the darkness in her with just her natural where she is, but now that her curse has been activated, it's going to be a lot worse. So, how do you handle this going forward? Like I said, it was bad enough to control before. It's going to be nigh impossible to control now with all of that on top of it. And it's kind of interesting. Like, I wasn't expecting, like, kind of closing that off too, is like, I wasn't expecting her to kind of forgive Roman like she did, like leaning against him, because like, no matter what the circumstances, they still kind of have feelings for each other. And I think, and even Klaus comments on the fact is that showing mercy like that, he's like, yeah, you sure as hell didn't get that from my side of the family. But even with all that going inside of her, like, she was still strong-willed enough not to just kill the person she's super angry at. Kind of having a rational thought of like, yeah, it's not his fault the way things kind of played out. So it's kind of interesting. will we see Roman anymore after this? I mean, because we know Antoinette leaves, so I wonder, is Roman going with her? I'd assume, kind of only family they have left and everything. Like I said, it still kind of caught me surprised, the whole, like, her and Elijah situation. She talks about, like, she hopes that they see each other, they'll, to the next time they see each other again. Even Elijah's like, if we see each other again, she's like, I hope so. So that still potentially opens up the whole, like, oh yeah, they might be a thing in the future again, but it's like weird because it's like, oh yeah, sorry for what my family did. It's like, well, sorry about what my family did to yours. It's like, it's an awkward situation that they kind of got caught in the middle of. So like I said, one interesting threat being the purists seemed to be completely wiped out, but we still have the issue of hope. And that's going to end with everyone turning their back on her. The witches, the vampires, and the werewolves will turn on her, like, especially because she's such a threat. I mean, it's like, what do you do with her anyway? Like, do they plan on trying? I mean, I'd assume they try and kill her, much like the purists are going to do, just because it's like, oh. Hell, there might even be things where people are like, Marcel needs to step up and do it himself because he's the only one strong enough that would be able to take down the originals and potentially Hope. Might be something like that. But obviously Marcel would have his hesitations because it's like, no, like Hope is like family. The Michelsons are family. Always have been, always will be, so. I didn't talk about it, but there's the witch side of things that kind of got interesting too. When everyone got back up, I was like, oh, what's this all about? And I was like, vampire blood. I was like, is that what that is? I was like, or am I just jumping to a conclusion? She's like, no, I was right. Turns out, I guess to punish them because it's like, yeah, they either had two choices. They could come back as, I wonder if the witch that Josh ended up killing, because that's the only witch we saw under Emmett's like command. So I'm guessing it's that specific dude. But it's kind of sad because it's like, it's heartbreaking because it's like, oh, she's back. It's like, oh, Vince is almost happy for a second, but it's like, oh, it's under these circumstances. And none of those witches, I mean, at the very least, in Ivy's case, she didn't want to, but I assume like none of them wanted to like live like that. None of them wanted to be vampires, so they were just going to die. Then, like, there's a whole ancestral well situation, which is kind of like in retro. You kind of forget about that sometimes. I'm like, all right, that things kind of suck in the ancestral well. It's like, right. Like, because they're just bound there because that's where all witches kind of draw their magic from, and it's kind of like, oh man, that's kind of sucky. It's kind of interesting because it's like Vincent wanted to show her, like, if you go here when you die, this is what's going to be. You're just going to be here, and you're basically going to act like a battery to magic. So you up here thinking it's going to be some paradise or some great thing. It's like, no, it's not like that. You're just stuck here to be drained like a battery, sadly. But she obviously didn't like that, but it's like, what choice do I have? Either I go there, because I'm sure as hell not going to be a vampire, so what choice do I have? And for the woman he loves, and not just the woman he loves, but for everyone to know peace when this is all said and done, they released the ancestral well, so that's completely gone. They've all been set free. Ivy sadly passes away. It's just like you got her back for a little bit just to lose her again. He knew what was going to be in the end, but I think maybe on some level, Vincent might have been hoping that she would live as a vampire. It's like, yeah, he has his issue with vampires, but at very least, it's like we had our moment. Maybe we could extend it a little further, but it's like when your time's up, I guess. Vampires kind of being that exception to that rule, but even they kind of had their complications with it because when the people they love are gone, there's like, even they can't escape death, eventually. They're not completely deathless, so, but it's just gotta be sad just kind of losing the woman you love twice. So, and now the witches aren't as powerful as they were before because they're not drawing on their ancestral well. It's now like just pure earth magic. What does that mean going forward with the Hope situation? Well, we will just have to wait and see how that kind of unravels going forward. Like I said, we haven't really seen much from the wolves since the whole, like, oh, we backing them up last episode. So, like I said, it's definitely going to be interesting going forward. Like I said, once again, now that Hope's curse has been activated. So, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Colony, a great episode. A lot of things went down this episode, so we're going to break everything down. First of all, we finally learned 100% about what Kynes is all about, what his whole grand scheme, grand plan is. And it turns out that basically I was somewhat right in the right direction. He's kind of building an army of his own, but for not the way we thought it was going to be. Essentially, his plan is to build an army to fight the war when the war is over. The enemy that's coming after the Raps is coming here. Win or lose, whoever wins ends up going home, but Earth is still going to be in the condition as in. And basically, he's holding on to all these outliers, all these skilled people for the purpose of having them be an army to take back Earth from all these. Because the people who are with the IGA, the occupation, all of them believe like, oh, we'll be the ones ruling when this is all said and done. Because like, oh, we've been so loyal so that when it's all said and done, we'll be the ones with all the power and position when it's all said and done. And that's what Kynes wants Seattle to be, the fortress, to be the kind of centerfold of the true resistance of taking Earth back from, you know, the occupation completely. Because that's the thing, like, if the Raps leave completely, like, I mean, I guess maybe if the IGA gets some gifts from the Raps before they leave, if they ultimately win. I mean, the question is, like, if the Raps lose, what happens to Earth then? Like, I still kind of feel like, but then again, like, if the Raps lose, then they're still going to fight back. Maybe even the Raps win and they decide to stick around, at least Seattle will be there to gotta be a safeguard. It seems more so like it's a battle against humanity rather than a battle against the Raps. It seems like, because like I said, they say, like, when it's all said and done, they go home. It's like, who says they will 100% do that? I mean, the Raps came all the way here because they were running from their enemy. Their enemy's only coming this far because they want the Raps. But it's like, what if it's no longer an issue for them? Like the enemy, what if the Raps are no longer an issue? Wipe them all out. Earth there might be like, hey, this planet's here. Why not just take over and wipe it out too? Blah, 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 blah. Or the Raps might go, hey, we have nothing to fear anymore. We could go back home, or we can make Earth our permanent residence. We kind of messed it up a little bit. Like, oh, let's hollow it out and do our own thing with it. I don't know. It's kind of up in the air about where that would go, but that's kind of interesting finding out that that's what this was all about. That basically for such a, because he's never, like, he's played along like, oh, he believes in his cause and stuff like that, but he's always kind of been like slowly being a resistance member from the outside. He's kind of like a resistance member to the highest degree, essentially. So it's kind of interesting kind of seeing that side of things, being like, I didn't expect that to be, like, I knew he had something planned. And it's kind of interesting because Snyder kind of points it out too when he, like, talking to Helena, it's like, he's reverse engineering. Like, that tech he has isn't tech he got from them, because it's like, why would they really just kind of willingly give you their tech? It's like, no, they probably allowed him to test it out, the tech or whatever. Maybe they did give him that just on conditions and stuff like that. Of like, oh, he's doing such a great job. It's like, oh, let's reward him. But he's slowly been re-engineering it, like that material that that the resistance ended up stealing. That. So whether that thing in itself is something he reverse engineered, or whether that is exactly from the Raps themselves, that's their exact technology and not something he reverse engineered, then, you know, so. The whole Harris situation played out a little differently than I would have kind of expected it to. Because I feel like, I was like, yeah, they're going to, like, Katie, Broussard, and Will are going to show up there. He's going to be there. And they're talking all this shop in front of him. He goes back and reports it to Kynes, and now finds out about, like, the whole Snyder situation, actually being kidnapped, but he never said anything about it. He goes to meet with Snyder and Garland, ends with him getting killed. And then you have Snyder doing the thing he's doing, that he literally killed 3 outliers, kind of caused an explosion that hurt other people, collateral damage, just so that it would give the IGA the need to investigate. I mean, because to be fair, and it's something Kynes is like, the IGA's been breathing on my neck. They just needed an excuse, and Snyder gave them that excuse they needed to kind of just investigate, see what the hell, like, Kynes is up to, because he's been kind of such a well-kept secret, like, what he's up to. So now it's kind of out there in the open. And I thought it was kind of an interesting perspective he put it up there. He's like, you want to know why, you want to call me out and stuff like that, but you guys are the weaklings, because it's like, you know why they chose you to be in the positions that you are? Because you are morally corrupt people, and they knew that you'd be jumping at the chance. That's why all the people who are in these positions in the occupations are like, kind of like, it's like, you're cowardly people, people who surrendered so easily. And it's just because essentially, what he says is like the difference between intelligence and cunning. It's because, like, he's like, you guys think you're so smart that you're looking this far ahead. He's like, I'm not just looking that far ahead. I'm looking even further beyond this kind of stuff. They're just looking at what's in front of them, the Raps doing what they need to and stuff like that. But it's like, Kynes is thinking even beyond that. Like, it's kind of essentially, you know, so I thought it was kind of, and I like the analogy he used where it's kind of like, you guys are like crabs. They knew that you would be the crabs that would grab everyone and drag them back to the bottom. It's like, because you're such scummy people, the Raps knew they didn't have to worry about it. They just have to present the opportunity, and they knew you'd gobble up at it. It's like, oh yeah, they pick the dredges of humanity, just like I said, the most morally corrupt people they could, to take over these positions, because they wouldn't bat an eye. They'll do whatever they're told, like good little I guess keep it in analogy, crabs, you know, traitors. I guess you want to get all like about it, you know. So it's just kind of interesting. And once again, I feel like this is the most like, I don't know. I'm about to say like this might be one of the most grotesque things Snyder's ever done. But to be fair, it's like when you keep going back, you're like, but is it really? You forget some of the stuff here and there. It's like, oh yeah, like no, like everything. It's like Snyder's done a lot of grotesque shit over the course of the series. It's like kind of makes you go, man, he is legitimately a weasel. Because like anytime he has a redeeming moment, you're like, oh man. And then like next time you turn around, like literally, then he'll have a redeeming moment every season, and then it'll just kind of like in the next season, you're like, but you went around, turned around, and did that grotesque crap, and it's like, oh, you got close to the Bowman family, things ended the way they did, and rather than being remorseful and letting that just like change you to be a better person, what the hell do? You go off and just become. Arguably continue to be the same piece of crap you've always been, potentially even worse, you know? So it's like, as Snyder has said it himself, like he's playing all sides, which will catch up with him. In what shape or form that's going to be, I don't know. With everything kind of being set up the way it is, I'm kind of getting a feeling like it might be Bram who might ends up being the one to put him down, but we'll see it in the long run. I feel like Bram out of anyone has the biggest motivation, like even before now. Just everything that went down in season 2 with Snyder is enough for him to hate Snyder, but plus the whole Charlie situation, oh yeah. Plus, he let Snyder get away before, and now Snyder's going off and done even worse stuff. It's like, no, I got to put you down now. So, we'll see. There's also the thing at the beginning, I don't know what the hell that is, where it's like, you see these soldiers, and obviously they speak 2 different languages. These 2 soldiers, they've got like numbers on their back, like they're in these pods scattered everywhere, and then there's these things, and with like, that was kind of acting invisible, and it killed both the soldiers. I can only assume that was kind of like, aspect of like them on the front lines. Either that was in the future, which I doubt it is, but I mean maybe potentially that could have been a scene that was kind of taking place in the future or somewhere else in the world, because maybe the full enemy hasn't gotten here, because let's not forget, like some of the enemy has slipped through the wraps, so maybe some of them have been, or because that didn't look like a wrap there, because obviously the wraps look more like cyborgs. Obviously, they compared them to anything, they're more like Cybermen, like obviously not necessarily, but that's the kind of closest thing, kind of like, you know, they're kind of droid looking, but like this thing looked fleshy, so the enemy that they're running from seems more fleshy potentially, and that technology, so I don't know, maybe that was something rap related, but I feel like that was more like the enemy, so whatever is here is already attacking, and they're already sending the outliers out there to do, like the battle is already taking place on Earth a little bit at a time. Like we got a glimpse of that earlier this season, but we haven't really seen it kind of come back in any shape or form, so that might be them leaning into it, like yeah, the battle is already happening on a smaller scale, but the enemy's full forces are on their way here, and then it's going to go full blown, because you also got to remember too, this whole outlier situation is just one section. This is like what's happening in, you know, Seattle. I mean, the outlier situation is worldwide, as you can tell. So, like I said, that's what I'm chalking that up to. Like, because I was like, it can't be like a training exercise, because it's like, oh, you're killing those people. So it's like, has to be like a smaller scale point of the war, like happening in certain places, I'd assume, you know? Because it looked like the pods were being just dropped off in like, it's just like, oh man, time for battle. Oh, enemies here, send in our soldiers. Boom. So that is, once again, like, it's not like the outliers are being used to charge some powerful weapon or something. It's like, oh no, like I said, it's just they're legitimately the front line of defense. It's like, you're the most skilled, we need you to be out there in the front lines to do the most damage. You be our sacrificial lambs. Like, what's beyond them, I have no idea, because it seems like they're the mainstay weapon, but I mean, maybe the Raps have other plans too, like keep them distracted long enough that they ended up having time to use whatever weapon they secretly have in plan that no one else knows about. I mean, hell, for all we know, their plan could be like, hey, let's draw all our enemies there, get them on Earth, pop back up on their ship, and blow up the entire planet. You don't know if that could be their whole thing. Like, I don't know. That's the thing. But the entire time we're talking about the big scale and the big side of things, we also got to bring it down back to the smaller points in the story, which play a big role in the story. It's the whole Bowman family situation. You have that awkward moment between Amy and Katie, because no matter what the circumstances is, Katie still kind of hoping for just a normal life, because she wants to explain everything to Bram. And it's like, Bram already gets it, but what about Gracie? And I think it's because, and it's something that Amy kind of talks about, it's a lot easier for Will to act when it comes to, like, yeah, he's not as suicidal as before, but for him, it's like, no, I gotta fight. There's an enemy in front of me where I can focus all my anger and all my sadness. So, like, I can focus all my negative emotions on this one thing and not have to think about what I'm going through with the whole Charlie thing. You know, because he said he's going to deal with it in his own way, which I was like, even last episode, I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound good. You never want to deal with a situation like that on your own, because it's not even like he's letting Katie help. Because the sad thing is, even Katie's kind of off dealing with it on her own, because, like, Will's not there. Like, he opened up a little bit, but it's not like they're really dealing with it. It's just like going from one thing to another just so you don't have to focus or think about it. So Katie kind of reluctantly kind of goes along with a lot of stuff that's kind of said and done just for that purpose, because like I said, maybe it's just her way of kind of dealing with things too. But she asked the question to Amy, like, what happened? Like, is Will actually okay? You know, because she knows if she asks Will, he won't actually give her a straight answer. But it's like, maybe from a third impartial party like Amy, maybe she'll get the truth. And she's like, someone like him has to do action. You know, does, like I said, what's kind of interesting is the look. It's like when Will was like, okay, we kidnapped the IGA guy, and then like you saw Katie look at him, I was like, yeah, she doesn't know, right? Like that's why I was kind of like, oh, that's how she finds out. It never comes up verbally, but it's like, cause once again, listen, I mean. He did talk. I don't remember if he last episode, if he went in all the detail. Like I definitely know he left out the whole Bram situation, but I don't remember if he went into specific details about kidnapping Snyder and all of that. Like I think that was another detail he left out. Like once again, still not bringing up the whole Bram situation. Like I said, I think that's why he's kind of reluctant to kind of bring up Bram in conversation, because he feels so guilty about that. Once again, he doesn't want to bring that up to Katie, let her know about that, but. Then there's a whole situation of her and Amy getting left behind when O'Neill was like, yo, you two come with me. The rest of my boys are going to stay here with it. And it's like no conversation was had. Broussard and Will just kind of nodded to each other and left. It's like Katie's like, dude, I'm your wife. You ain't going to talk to me about it. And the same thing for Amy. It's like, I'm here too. You didn't talk to me about it. So... And I think that's kind of a good, powerful thing, because it's like it's showing you just how far Will is slipping away from his family. Because to the point he's not really even talking to Katie about some of this stuff. We see what's going on with Bram and Gracie. Like he's getting more attached to his girlfriend Meadows' family, because it's like that's more of a stable family than his own family. His family has not been stable in a very long time. Even more so because, like I said, Bram has kind of been forced to kind of be the adult in the situation. It's like, yeah, these are extenuating circumstances that would cause anyone to have to be older than what they are. But at the same time, it's like, no, like it's even more so pressure being put on him, because it's like Gracie shows up at the house. She's alone and everything. And it's like Bram shows up. He's like, I'm so sorry. And it's like there's sour milk there. And it's like, you should have milk with your cereal. And Gracie says the saddest thing. She's like, I know why mom and dad don't want to be around anymore. It's because when they look at me, it makes them think of Charlie. And it's like, that's the saddest thing. Like the fact is she's taking that guilt on herself, because she blames herself. She's like, it's my own fault. Because in her mind, whether they say it or not, like she probably takes it upon herself to be like, it's my fault that things are the way they are. Like our family's broken because of me. I'm just a constant reminder of Charlie. Charlie only got left behind because he was helping me and stuff like that. I got away, but Charlie didn't. Maybe that's kind of like the guilt. But once again, it is probably that, but it's not in the sense of like, oh, they love her any less or they blame her. It's just the fact of the matter. It's like, I think because they're so caught up in everything, they're not trying to like, Gracie isn't the biggest priority, just because it is a reminder of what they lost. It's like in their attempt to hold on tight to what they still had left, they kind of almost take it for granted, and they just kind of loosen their grips until like it's too late. It's going to get to the point they end up pushing Bram and Gracie away. Like it's already happening with Bram, and it might escalate even further with Gracie. Might end up being like, nah, I'm done with this family. You do whatever you want. You want to fight some more, you want to do this and that. I'm going to stay here with Gracie because I'm doing what you two aren't doing. I'm looking after her. And then that might cause even bigger divide between Katie and Will, because it's like Will wants to be all self-destructive. He wants to fight. He wants to do this. He wants to do that. But then Katie might be like, you know what? No, like, I'm not going to do that. Like, we still have 2 children left. We lost Charlie, yes, but we can't afford. So that might be the ultimate decision when this is all said and done. Maybe Will won't go through with that whole outlier situation because he has to look out for his family. Maybe he will. Like I said, we'll have to wait and see. Because Broussard's definitely going down that path, and Amy wants to join him too. She's like, I love the whole situation of like her being like, she was so lost for such a long time, but like being on this path with Broussard kind of made her find her purpose again. So it's interesting where it's kind of like, you see that kind of sentiment and just kind of see them bonding a little bit. Like I said, whether or not that's like a love thing or whether it's just kind of like a partnership thing, well, we'll see. Just like I said, week's episode made me kind of think, I'm like, oh, it seems like there might be some intimacy in that. But like I said, in the long run, we'll see. I I am curious to see where Kynes has gone because he has gone underground. He shut off a lot of the stuff to Seattle because it's like this way the IGA is blind to what he's really doing. So, and especially if things are going to move like this, because we didn't get the other side of the conversation. We got Broussard and Amy, and like they're a team on this, but it's like, where does Katie and Will stand? Then Bram and, because at least, because in their case, they have a family to worry about. Broussard is like, him and Amy only have each other, so it's no real worries, you know? Like, they kind of only have each other and don't have to worry about each other. We have each other's back through this all, you know? So, and then ultimately, Helena leaving all of this to Snyder. Snyder's like, no, I'm literally not going to go through running a place again. Also, considering that place being Seattle with everything that's going down, like, you're not about to leave this shit show in my table. It's like, oh yeah, you shouldn't have come back and done a really good job. So, everyone's kind of like, yep, this is the job you got. So, good luck to you. So, it's kind of like, kind of sucks to be you, Snyder, but it's kind of like, oh, maybe you're just deserved. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he runs Seattle now that Seattle has kind of like been powered down off the grid and everything, which is probably going to, because everyone's kind of wondering like, what's up with this? So like things are getting hectic. You see like, looks like mobile units are coming into Seattle and stuff like that. So things are heating up, not just on Earth, but definitely in Seattle, because it seems like Seattle is going to be the center. It's kind of interesting because this season at all, they haven't touched internationally. They touched a little bit, I guess, with like the higher ups and stuff like that. But beyond that, like we've gotten a little taste here and there, like in season 2. I don't remember if they ever went like any shots of international stuff in season 1. It's so crazy to think about that. Like season 1 and season 2 had certain aspects to them, like the whole LA block, and it's like that's completely removed. I mean, because it's like we got a new set of characters, and there's a lot of characters, like, what went down in season 2, you don't know whatever happened to them. There's at least, like, 2 characters I have in mind. It's like, oh, yeah, whatever, never found out about, isn't it Jennifer? And, Maddie, isn't it? Katie's sister? Like, we saw the ending, but it was like beyond that, it's like, is it just kind of implied that they're gone, or just like what that's going to be? Like, it's just one of those interesting things where it's like we're in this new setting, and it's just kind of like a lot of those characters and those stories kind of got left behind because it's just kind of like, and the LA block has been concluded. Interestingly enough, the LA block has been repopulated too, so let's not forget about that. So that might circle back around, because we are at the tail end of the season. There's only like 2 more episodes, so it's definitely winding down, and I'm curious to see what this is winding down, but also like what this is winding up to be. Like as I said, as everything kind of escalates on, like I said, on a more personal level between the characters to just the bigger worldwide of like, holy shit, like war is about to break out and Earth is going to be caught in the middle type of thing. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I meant to bring this up earlier. I just reminded myself along those whole line of thought behind Kynes, because the whole thought process was like, oh, all the people, like construction people and stuff like that you were getting were going to be like people who were going to be like building the weapon engineers and stuff like that. It's like, no, these are people to help rebuild society. That's why you need people. That's why Amy got in so easy too, being a doctor and everything, because it's like, okay, with you in, you know, you're going to be part of the new resistance, you know, it's just kind of like the new world order that's essentially going to be created in the aftermath of this war and everything. So that's what that's all about. That's why you need people who can do construction and stuff like that to rebuild Earth after everything's all said and done. So, like I said, a great episode. I'm so interested to see where the next week's episode takes us with all of this. And now moving on to this week's episode of Reverie, a great episode. I like what this episode did, blending obviously Holly's story with Mara's story, especially because Mara's got, I mean, it's kind of interesting because these 2 worlds kind of collided on, well, so like, because of because Chris being Holly's therapist, but also, him and Mara have a past. Not only did they work together, he became her therapist, and they also had a relationship, which is just kind of a complicated thing all in its own. So, but balancing that out in this episode, obviously Holly is paralyzed. She's a former dancer, and she won't leave the Reverie, even though because of her condition. If she stays like that for too long, it would become it becomes a medical thing immediately for her, because obviously she'd be in there once in a while for a good chunk of time, but then it got more and more lengthy each and every time she went in there. So But it turns out it's kind of sad because, first of all, I really like that moment of like obviously Mara trying to get close to her and everything, and they have that moment where they're dancing and stuff. Like she's teaching Mara how to dance, and she's like, "I know what you're trying to do." Mara's like, "Well, yeah, you know what I'm doing, but you're not stopping me." And you know, you have Holly being like, "Yeah, I kind of miss having someone to talk to." So it's kind of this cute moment and this beautiful moment of her just teaching her. Like obviously they're kind of bonding a little bit, and they talk a little bit, but things kind of get a lot more complicated. Once questions start popping up, that's when she kind of, because especially when Zeke came up, so it's like, oh man, because Vivian had talked about the fact is that like, oh yeah, Zeke broke her heart, like he left her like after the accident and stuff like that. I guess it was too much for him to handle. He just bailed or whatever. We end up learning later on. In fact, that's not the case at all. In fact, Holly's the one that broke up with him, which is kind of like, huh. So I guess that was just her way of telling it to Vivian, just so she wouldn't have to really explain like what that's really all about. Because if she told Vivian, then it would have probably been a bigger thing. Because like obviously what we end up finding out later on is that she was pregnant at the time she was having she was in an accident. She didn't tell Zeke about it because she knew Zeke never wanted kids. So for her, it's probably just kind of like, yeah, just it's something that she probably, I mean, who knows? Maybe Zeke would have changed his mind if the circumstances had. But it's like in the way she tells about it, it seemed like he was pretty clear about not wanting kids. So for her, it's why she handled that alone, because it was just like it was her loss, because it was a loss that no one else could experience but her, because her sister wouldn't be able to understand and Zeke wouldn't be able to understand, because that was something only for her, because it was something only she knew that Zeke would, because she was trying to find a way to let him know, because she was waiting for the right time. But it's just sad. And the sad thing is, because of her condition, she could never get pregnant again. Like it's just cause for her too, it's like these are the two most important things to me. It's like dancing, because dancing was kind of her thing. It was like, not only was she good at it, it was kind of thing like if she needed to work something out, she danced. And then the thought of raising her little girl, like, what life she would, be leading her little girl down, kind of, it made her happy. And just to have both those things taken away from her, it's a lot to handle. And she kind of turned inward. And the problem is, and it's so interesting, like I say, because making a comparison to Mara knows what she's going through. And it's something even Chris brings up, because her and Chris, because it's even something Charlie from the beginning was like, yo, so make sure which Chris you're being here as. Are you being here as Mara's therapist, or are you here as Mara's ex? So that's and it kind of, you see it in the episode, they kind of skate that line, because there's that attraction. They still find their way to each other. But once again, it's still kind of a hairy situation, him being your therapist and everything. Plus being your ex, it's just, like I said, it's just a complicated situation. But especially later, because it gets even more complicated because Holly doesn't want to leave. And I think that brought up such a, I don't know how to properly phrase it, what would be the appropriate word for it, but it's just like, it brought up like this, not necessarily ultimatum, but this situation, this conflict of like, well, what do we do in this situation? Because it's never come up before. Like, she wants to stay in there, even though she knows it might kill her, because she has nothing left on the outside, because it's like she can't walk or dance on the outside. Plus Sadie's not there. So it's like, what's left for me out there in the real world? And even Paul's like, honestly, I mean, we make her as comfortable as possible already. So it's like, if she decides to do this, we should let her. It's like, really? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, she's an adult and she should be allowed to make her own decisions. This is her choice. Who are we to really interfere in that type of situation? And like I said, it's that complicated situation, because it's like, it's one of those things of like, yeah, it's her choice after all. But then you have Alexa's perspective, which isn't even like, once again, is that thing of like, well, you feel like Alexa kind of misses a little, because of who she is. Like, a lot of the empathy kind of like doesn't seem like it's there in some cases. Like, it's like Alexis is a complicated, as I've said constantly over and over again, but for her it's like, no, she's not going to just die in Reverie, because for her it's like, Reverie is meant to be a place where people can go to be happy, to bring some joy or something to their lives. It's supposed to fix things, not just be something, a suicide machine for you to just die. It's like, because if Holly does it, then maybe other people start doing that, and it's like, that's not what my machine was meant to do. And I think also, I think there's a combination of many different reasons why it seems like Alexis would probably have that opinion. Maybe it's because of her circumstances with her brother, which I feel like it's never outright been said, but my thought process has always been, Dylan has always been kind of her main reason for creating Reverie in the first place. So people who've been through kind of tragic situations can find some kind of closure, fix, whatever's kind of broken. And for her, it's like, she doesn't want her machine just to be something that a permanent solution to something like that. It's like, I don't want my machine to be that. So it's like, if we have to, we'll rip the BPI out of her. And it's like, Paul's like, for two things. One, Holly didn't give any consent for that type of situation of like some kind of invasive surgery like that. But two, it's like, and probably the biggest thing is too, it's like, we don't know what that would do. Like, we've never done that before. And the fact of the matter is, it could have, backlash. It could, like, put her in a coma or something, like, do major brain damage, mess her up neurologically. But Alexa's kind of like, well, then we'll kind of have to use this as an opportunity. But so it's that debate on how to handle this situation. And it's like, that's a complicated situation. Like, do you do what the person's asking you to do? Because this is uncharted territory for them. And it's something even Paul talked about. Like, the fact of the matter is, this conversation has never come up before. So it's like, it will probably get them thinking about it. Like, well, we may never get that conversation within the show, but obviously, like, in the context of the show, that would be a conversation they'd be having going forward. Like, how do we handle something like this if it ever happens again, So, but after talking to Vivian, Mara ended up finding out, like, oh, Vivian has a mild case of MS and she's sick. And just because it's almost because she sees that Holly's just kind of caught in her own stuff, it's like, no, Holly doesn't have time. Like, my sister's already got her complicated situation. She's dealing with what she's dealing with. And for one, it's like, I don't want to stack on top of that. Plus, my sister's kind of in her mindset right now that she's not going to help me. She's not going to worry about my situation because she's still busy worried about her own. So, and it's even kind of something that Chris ends up touching on, because obviously the whole situation's kind of got him upset because he can't help it. But, obviously the lines between Holly and Mara's situation are kind of similar. So the lines kind of get blurred, especially for him. It's like his personal feelings are at stake here, not just his, not just him as a psychologist, or rather therapist. Like, it's not just his medical duty. It's also like the fact of the matter is emotions got to get involved when it comes to Mara. And so he says some stuff of like, yeah, I get it. You miss your family and everything. But he's like, I was there. I was still there. Me and other people who loved you were there, but you pushed us aside. And it's just kind of like, cause for him, that's always been, he's kind of had like little snarky remarks just because he's hurt, because like she hasn't contacted him in like 19 months. It's like the last time he sent a message to her and she never got back to him in all that time. So, and even more time probably would have passed by if like these circumstances hadn't found their way to Mara, so, and that ends up, Mara kind of speaking from her own heart. She ends up talking to Holly about the fact of the matter is your sister needs you. The fact of the matter is to protect yourself, you sink in. And it's like this reality, I get it. So I understand what I'm asking you to give up, but your sister needs you. And it's the most heartbreaking thing too, because for Holly, it's like, I can't ever come back here. It's not like, I can, because for one, that wouldn't be healthy for her anyway. But two, it's like going back to the real world would mean she could never come back here because it'd be too hard. Being here for a couple of hours and then going back to her life, a life where she can't walk, where she can't dance, and Sadie's not there is too heartbreaking. That's why she was okay with just staying this time. But there are still people who love her and care about her, who are out there who need her. Your sister needs you. She can't do this alone. You've been caught up in your own situation, and it's like, I get what I'm asking you to give up, but, you got to remember there are people out there who need you. So, and then Holly, that final performance with Sadie, legitimately, I was tearing up. I was like, dude, that sucks. It's so heartbreaking, dude. It's like, I don't know, man. It hits you in your heart, man. It's just kind of like, man, like, it's just a sucky situation all around. It's just kind of like, you can't fault her for holding on to that. Like, after losing what you've lost, like, no one can blame you for being in that situation. And like, once again, Mara's not going to blame her because Mara was literally in that same situation of losing so much. And it's just that's a lot to carry, And I think the thing is, it's because they were both in their own right carrying it on their own. Because even Mara talked about it, like, she kind of pushed Chris away because for her, it's just like, she did kind of like, because Chris had said, like, it's like, you gave up on everything and everyone, even me. It's like, why couldn't you just like, so, because it was their own way, because everyone kind of handles things in their own way, whether it's the healthiest way, that's, but for Mara, it's like she needed to get away from everything and just be alone. That was just her way. Because for her, it's like, it's almost like barely being able to breathe and just being by herself. She could barely catch her own breath. But if she was around anyone else, she'd always be gasping for air. I think that's kind of like a good way to kind of look at it. And it's just kind of, I know, like I said, that scene just kind of broke my heart. So, but we did have that moment at the end where she's training the girls at Vivian's dance studio. So that's really nice. Like, even though I think it kind of fills both of those holes. Like, she found a way to kind of turn her situation into kind of a positive, train young dancers and pass on her wisdom and stuff, you know? So I think that's kind of nice. And the situation will bring her and Vivian closer together just because she's like, I'm going to be here for you, Vivian. I am here. I'm sorry I was, where I was in my mind and everything, but I'm here now to help, rely on me. So. And even Mara goes to Chris and explains, like, the fact that she loves him and she cares for him, she always will. The fact of the matter is she just needs to figure herself out first before she even worries, before she can even, because she wants, when they get back together, it to be, like, at the right time. Because in her condition right now, because he's even something Charlie said, it's like, just because she's doing better doesn't mean that she's well. Like I said, she's still got a lot to work out. She's like, I still got some things to do, but, and he's like, call me whenever you feel like the time is ready. So that's kind of neat. It's also interesting because, like, there's a whole Paul situation where Paul kept being like, oh, did something happen between her and Chris? And then Charlie wouldn't really give him an answer. He's like, oh yeah, your non-answer is kind of an answer. I even love he's asking Alexa. He's like, the fact is he didn't say anything is kind of an answer that they did date or something. Alexis is like, you literally don't ask me. I'm not one of those. I'm like the last person you want to be talking about, asking for advice about the whole interpersonal relationship type of thing, So I thought that was nice. Which is kind of interesting, too, because that does set up the whole, like, oh, yeah, Paul, that's a thing for Mara. But in the end, he's kind of like, oh, yeah, that Chris dude, he's a pretty solid dude. So that's interesting. So we'll see what that ultimately will become potentially later on. So, but another thing about this episode is we do find out that Ray is still alive. I kind of had a feeling, like, because initially they make it seem like Ray might have still been alive. I thought maybe he was in jail or something, but then it's like, but the gun just, I was like, oh, I guess he's not alive. I should have went, he was alive. It's just he's which has got to be the hardest thing to deal with, dude. Not only losing them, that it was this man that did it, and the fact of the matter is that he's not only is he still alive, which is kind of like, it's hard because I don't even know like how Mark, like I won't even begin to understand how Mara feels, because it's probably like part of he's like, I kind of wish he was dead, but it's like that'd be too easy. And at the same time, it's not like he's in prison suffering for it either, because he's just in a coma. It's like, because I think the biggest thing for her is why. And you just see the rage burning in her eyes looking at him. It's just like, you took everything from me and you thought you were just going to get off so easily with just ending it. It's like not like that for you. So I'm curious to see what that storyline ends up developing into. To finally, like, it might just be a situation. It seems like, I mean, at least from where we stand, like, maybe there's extenuating circumstances, but outright it just seems like Ray was just kind of an unstable person and just things sadly escalated to that point, like. But I'm curious, like, what Mara's gonna do with like this new conviction of like, yeah, I'm gonna settle things, I'm gonna fix myself. But it's like, would she kind of go about it the right way or not? Like I said, I have no idea what she plans to do with the Ray thing. I can assume where that potentially would go. Her, like, might be when he wakes up or something like that, or maybe she'll create her own reverie based on this. Maybe she'll get someone to hook a reverie up to him or something, that even though he's unconscious, maybe he subconsciously could create a reverie or something like that. And that's how she gets answers about what happened. I don't know. Like I said, this is all about her dealing with her own stuff. Like I said, it's just kind of a lot of these cases end up kind of like swooping her into kind of dealing with her own stuff at the same time. But I feel like definitely this case on multiple levels, not only it just being Chris coming back into her life, but even like the Holly connection of like, yeah, Holly, being in a similar circumstance, obviously different circumstances, but the pain of kind of losing what's most important to you, so I'm very interested to see what that kind of ultimately ends up turning out to be. And will we be seeing any, I mean, Chris is there, he's established and everything, so whether we'll be seeing him a lot in the future, probably not. Like I said, Mars probably is not going to contact him until she's fully like feel like she's better now, so we'll ultimately see what happens there. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.